Hello, everyone. Dan Dog Crypto here. As you can see, the markets, uh, Bitcoin is holding in the 19,000. We have Ethereum. But key things, what's happening here is with Bitcoin, we have the CME futures, the paper, the cash settled Bitcoin that has been put into place. So there's a control factor that's happening here. You can see Ethereum. But cryptocurrencies are for the people because of this crazy environment of what's been happening. And it hasn't just started over the past, we'll say, 10 years, 15 years since 2008. That was a cascade effect that occurred when we had the mortgage crisis, and all of a sudden rates go crazy. But the truth of the is that you're too big to fail, and what monetary policies that have been happening over decades and not letting the markets fix themselves, and government officials with central banks all over the world correcting and fixing and choosing who survives and flooding the market with currency, which is devaluing this currency, the US dollar and other currencies. But very important is understanding what happened. I'm going to let you listen to this clip right here.
The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States. Now, what is this action, which is very technical, what does it mean for you? Let me lay to rest the bugaboo of what is called devaluation. If you want to buy a foreign car or take a trip abroad, market conditions may cause your dollar to buy slightly less. But if you are among the overwhelming majority of Americans who buy American-made products in America, your dollar will be worth just as much tomorrow as it is today. The effect of this action, in other words, will be to stabilize the dollar.
That was Richard Nixon, 1971, when he took America off the gold standard. The reason for taking America off the gold standards, Vietnam wars, increased money supply, but at that time, the dollar was backed by gold. Well, the increased spending from the government, other countries from all over the world wanted to exchange the US dollar for gold. So, to prevent a run on gold, he disassociated gold with the currency. So that would not happen. But at that point, what also happened is inflation was running rampant. We had an oil embargo. And what was happening at that point, you had shortage of oil, gasoline, long lines, odds and evens. Well, that continued for years. But what happens now is, how does the dollar become the reserve currency of the world, where now you've taken it off the gold standard? Well, it's with Saudi Arabia. What happened is United States signs a deal for military might to defend Saudi Arabia. putting in missiles, air defense, protecting Saudi Arabia, and that the crude oil would be denominated in US dollars. So all through the world, any crude oil, the barrel, could only be sold and bought with US dollars, giving a dominance to the US currency, where they would call it the petrodollar, but it was the US dollar. So now it has this dominance. That is what happened. Well, then what also happens is the gold markets. Well, then they introduce the paper markets, which you can buy and sell, create ETFs that represent the value of your gold. Same thing is happening with Bitcoin, suppressing the price, controlling the price. But the truth is, all central banks, poor monetary policies that have occurred and the excess spending where their treasury bonds are worthless because they devalue the currency, only hurting the people. So cryptocurrency is something that assists us all, where we can take ownership of. And that's why Pzen, with its compounding effect, allows anyone that is involved with Pzen, because the internet has changed everything. That's why it's called the Internet of Things. But large institutions, retailers are seeing the benefit and are rushing in. Pzen is a hedge against inflation. Early opportunity always gives the best returns. But what happens here is this is a global market. It's a continuous compounding. So when someone makes a purchase, all of a sudden, the amount that is in your wallet compounds. And that's on the pay it forward system, as I have described in other videos, which is a transaction transfer size. So now that represents the interaction. But we also have the frequency that that interaction occurs. So now, depending on the frequency of the interaction, the pay it forward redistribution, well, it can accelerate dramatically. So someone may hold it. That's why it's always good to have a plan. With Hex, we called it a staking ladder, and you time locked your certificate of deposit, quote unquote. Well, Pzen is a compounding financial instrument, which is trustless yield, which is going to be delivered into your wallet that you own. It becomes your vault. Because with the pay it forward system, what happens, it's always fair. The compounding effect received in your wallet will also increase future compounding effects and the size of your return. It will always increase with any redistribution, pay it forward. So it's an increasing yield. So time and interest. Well, the time is key based on the compounding is happening with every interaction. And that is a transaction transfer size with a frequency that occurs. The frequency that the interaction happens accelerates the time. Right now, Pzen is still in the launch phase. It launched organically. It's very important. No large whales, no price manipulation, a fair launch. Understanding the Howey test, how important this is that something that deems something a security with the efforts and the work, with the profits derived to benefit others with an effort. There is no effort. It's an economic engine, the code. It's immutable. That's why it will always do what it said it will do. So no work from the work of others. It's the code that is doing all the work. And your interaction with Pzen, your wallet then receives the Pzen. No work on your part other than the interaction, or if you choose to dollar cost average, receiving more Pzen, which building up more economic mass, which creates more return that will be compounded based on the transaction transfer size and the frequency. This is very fair and just, and it truly is a wealth redistribution that all who enter and interact will do well. It's very important to understand that, because what is happening to fiat money, we have to be very careful. But there's so many other things that are happening that the media doesn't discuss. The war that we have in the Ukraine, unfortunate, but it's creating something, an alliance. So you have the East and the West. So now the things that the attack that you see that is head on, you know that it's coming. So we have to be prepared. That is the reset. And at a future date, I will explain what I'm seeing, because there's price manipulations across the board. We had an issue with even the nickel markets, that a transaction failed. It didn't go through because they wanted a deliverance of a physical nickel, which is interesting, which is the first time that that's happened in 140 years. But that'll be for another discussion. But there's a lot of things that are occurring, that we have to take ownership of our money, because the compounding effect that is occurring on inflation over a period of time, the buying power is decreasing exponentially. So you have to invest and earn return that are higher than the rate of the inflation. And Pzen will do that. It is early. We're still in the launch phase. Hex launched and it was 365 days. And people still don't understand how Hex works. Well, it's a certificate of deposit. You time lock your money. But the key thing with HEX is the T shares. So we had 365 days. Bitcoin holders could have free claimed HEX. And the A lobby, you could enter in and send your ETH, and you could swap out ETH for HEX and mint your HEX. And then you would stake. So now, as long as you set a stake, there was a big payday that would be delivered, I believe it was on November 19th, which would have been the year end. Well, now this big payday bonus would be redistributed to all the holders that staked, all the Bitcoin that was not free claimed as well. So people were trying to front run. There's so many other things, but that were happening. But it was a 1 year launch, and it just slowly. There was no major spikes. Pzen already has had 1,000x, so there should be testimonials of ones that have interacted. If someone invested 10,000, that's 100,000. There's a testimonial of an increase. Someone just made 90,000, 90 plus thousand. If someone invested 5,000, you're at 50,000. Those should be testimonials. That really did happen because I've been seeing how the flow is. So HAX was a 365-day launch. This is only day 42, I believe. It's still in the launch and distribution phase, and it launched fairly without any pre-sale. And the reason we do sacrifices, it's really proclaiming no work from the work of others, no effort on my part, I'm not responsible, you do the work. So we do the work. Anyone that interacts, you build a community, you support the community, it builds organically. Pzen will do this. Hex has done it. And people still don't understand how Hex pays out. It pays out the inflation, which is 3.69% right here, which will go to the stakers. That's who gets the inflation, and that's your yield that is generated. But we've had Hedron launch, so now the most valuable NFT that they create is the 15-year, because it represents the most yield that is returned to you. A 15-year, a time lock for 15-year. What happens is the T-share rate is going to go parabolic, because anyone that has entered early will now, when do your stakes expire? And there's a reset, which increases the T-share value. But you have couple of mechanics that are happening. The rate of the T-shares that are going up is very important, because you're going to need more hacks, so they're going to need to time lock the hacks. But what happens is the yield will go down, because the more people that stake, what happens then is the yield drops. It's still a great yield, but based on a time lock for 15 years, you're going to get the highest yield. But when you have a 1 year, 3 year, 7 year, or 10 year, well, in the 1 year, as you saw Maxi, that they accumulated a lot of T-shares. At the end of that year, they're surrendering those T-shares, and then you can reinvest, which I would recommend it. And more hacks definitely will be time locked, but the yield over time will go down. That's why being early, being first with Hex was the greatest opportunity. It did do a 10,000x, and I believe it's going to explode as well. So we'll have price appreciation. But I do believe that Pzen will have price appreciation as well because of the dynamics on the pay it forward system, the 2% redistribution, which is very important because what happens now on every redistribution that is distributed to the wallet, it will increase your yield. So the more interactions and the more that the community grows and the more that everyone understands the beauty of Pzen, your yield will not decrease, it will increase because of the economic mass of your wallet. Because that's what then interacts with the code. Because the code represents something that's telling it based on the percentage of ownership that you have, the redistribution of the pool based on the transaction transfer size and whatever frequency it is, it gets redistributed. So at any time, whenever anyone enters, it will always be a fair system, pay it forward. But also what pay it forward represents, and it's more than just something that is a mechanically coded within Pzen. It also is something when you look at what pay it forward represents, it's inspired by generosity, it's inspired by kindness and compassion, because all too often we think too much about our own needs without considering how our behaviors, efforts affect others. What we say does matter. Ultimately, the person paying it forward grows as much as the person receiving the act of kindness. This is a financial instrument. When Conrad says feel good, we have a charity that will do good, but also it's a pay it forward that truly will create a opportunity for the interactions. So sharing it, it's a pay it forward system, which 2% gets redistributed to a wallet based on the transaction, transfer size, and the frequency, and this compounds. As your wallet receives that Pzen on the next interaction, you're gonna get a higher yield. So now when you have time, it becomes a truly revolutionary compounding financial instrument, which is greater than any growth compounding in the traditional markets, because those are based on a profit and loss, and whatever's redistributed, it's after all the finances are accounted for. But that's done on a yearly basis based on a dividend. This is better than any money market account done on a yearly basis. Hex is a CD, which is fantastic, but its denomination starts on day one, and the longer you go, so now you have periods. So those are time periods. So these time periods represent a yield. But more people that stake with Hex, the yield will start coming down. Still a great yield, still a fantastic product. I recommend it. I highly have introduced, I've done interactions with people that I wanted to introduce to Hex. I had something, it's like, they want to, like, I want to get into Hex, and I was explaining to them how hex worked. They didn't know it's a scam. This is what they said. It's a scam. Once it started running, and I believe it was at 25 cents, all of a sudden they wanted to get into hacks. And I'm like, well, you had the opportunity in the beginning. No, it's going up, it's going up. When the hype train is going, that's when everyone wants to get in. Early opportunities. Hex is a fantastic product. And you're going to see that the larger and more pools that are going to be built on it, because that's what's going to be needed to really gain the maximum yield. That's kinetic energy now. It's like putting a bullet in a gun. You need the gunpowder in order to fire the bullet. Well, in order to get the maximum yield from your T-shares, it's building on top of hacks and pooling it together to get the max yield. And that's what Maxi has done, and they've done a fantastic job. Instant liquidity. Here you have instant liquidity if you choose to interact at 2%. That gets redistributed. You can buy it, hold it. You want to trade it, trade it. You have free will. But time lock. Set a pattern, know what you're getting into. So this way you do not make errors. Let time work in your favor when something compounds. It is early. I believe Pzen has a great opportunity because it's a financial product and it's very simple to explain. But share it with others. Share the opportunity. Don't keep it a secret. If someone has not had a MetaMask wallet and someone that's you, show them how to do it. Teach them. If they need to open up a Coinbase or wherever country someone may be, show them. Help others in need because of the financial crisis that is upon us of what is happening with money. Conrad Pzen talks about the reset. There really is a reset and people are just not aware of what is going to happen. Be prepared. Pzen, early opportunity, share it. I believe it will create life-changing opportunities for anyone that has finances that are sitting and want to generate the income. Pzen is truly a great opportunity in along with hacks. I'm not I love hacks. I don't have a problem. But when I look to invest and allocate, I'll look at the probabilities. So you start checking off. And I believe Pzen has a great potential to really do some great things. So I would allocate to Pzen. So the same with hacks. I would assist someone to put it into hacks, but I would put my larger position in Pzen because I can see the upside dramatically because it's just getting started with 1,300 holders. Look at how many holders Hex has. So now that's you need a network effect and it keeps growing, which is great. Well, Pzen will do this. So share it. Your financial future is at risk if you have fiat currency because something is brewing and it's just crazy what is happening where people work very hard and try to generate an income that's denominated in the currency that they're working for that is being eroded. Stay strong. Talk to you soon.